So we need to learn about objects, and I'm kind of thirsty, so let's go ahead and make some tea. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this and create a new file. So a new file is a class, it's an object, it's the template. It has the data that is contained in our object and the methods that that object can do. So I'm going to do an Objective-C class, make sure it's NSObject, and I'm going to call this T. Make sure you have a capital, most classes have a capital. I'm going to do next. Create. And in Xcode, I can basically, in the header file, I can specify some of the properties of this. So I'm going to go ahead and do @property, float, I'm going to say ounces, and @property, non-atomic, strong, ns string star, flavor. And let's do an @property, bool, is open. So this is a very basic T. You'll notice that the floats and the bools, the C-type variables, like the very basic variables that aren't pointers, they don't need this non-atomic strong. Anything that's a pointer does need that non-atomic strong. So even if we use something that's from kind of the core foundation, the CG rects, we don't need this non-atomic strong because it doesn't have a pointer. So pointers require this. Can go ahead and save that. On the newer version of Xcode, you don't have to synthesize, but I'm not running that quite yet, so I'm going to synthesize. Ounces, flavor is open. So I have this T, and this whole T object, this is basically the blueprints, like I said. So in a real physical world thing, I'm going to go ahead and make some tea. Before I make my tea, though, I'm going to create this init method. So real quickly, just to go through it, I'm going to make sure I init with the super. I'm going to set some of my variables. So is it open? No. And how many ounces? 23. And the flavor of the tea, green tea. And then I'm going to return myself once I have that. So this is in my t.m, and that'll actually help create instances that are already set up with some of the variables. If I just ran an init, all the variables would be empty, they'd be nil. Alright, so in Xcode we created our .m and our .h files, and what we're going to do is not make copies but create instances. So when you create an instance, it's kind of like working at a factory. You have this blueprint, you have this template that you're working off of, that you can create multiple objects that are the same when they're first created, but once you start using them and they get old, they get their own unique personality to them. So what I want to make some green tea, and if you remember from the init method, it's going to automatically be a green tea, and I think like 24 ounces or so like that. So I need to say I want 2 instances. Make sure I do an alloc and init. So you need to create space and you need to initialize. So now that I set for create space, I'm not going to create copies of the class. I'm going to create instances of the T. Alright, good. We got some T. So let's go and look at what we can do with 2 instances of objects. So we have our 2 cans of tea, and they're initialized, and they have properties. And it turns out they are 23 ounces, not 24. Bummer. But we also have a flavor, so green tea, and they're unopened. Now it says on the can to shake it well before drinking it, but we can't do that because we don't have that method. So let's go ahead and create that method. So we're missing the shake method. The first place we want to go is t.h. If we go to this file, it lets everybody else know what methods we implement. So I'm going to go and say minus void. If I wanted to return like a true or false, so in case something happened where we couldn't shake the t, we could return a false, that'd be a minus bool. But since we're not worried about returning anything, we're just going to call it shake. So now I got this method in here, and if I go to t.m, I'll get this little warning saying, hey, you haven't implemented everything. Because I said in t.h that I had a shake method, and in here, I don't. And that's actually a really bad thing, because if someone else tries to call that shake method, ooh, bad thing. Basically, your program will crash because it tries to access something that doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and implement it. Minus void shake. And in this method, we're just going to do a simple log for this one, but in a game, you might actually transform an object, so you like rotate the image or just change the sizes, kind of play with the quirks of that. Or else, if it's in physics, you might actually mix the ingredients that are in the tea more. But if we're at this now, I'm just going to say the tea is shooken. Alright, so now we have a method called shake. We've implemented it in both our .h and our .m, so we're good to go. Alright, so we have a method called shake now. So I can say I got can1 and can2. I can say can2 shake, and I'll shake that tea. Now if I want to open can2, I have a variable called isOpen, and right now it's set to no. I can call can2 and say isOpen equals yes. And what that'll do is everything on the left side of the equals is being set. Anything on the right side is just like, what are you setting it to? So for example, if I said can2.isOpen is equal to can1.isOpen, it's not setting can1, it's just looking at can1 saying, hey, what's the value for that? And setting the value of can2 to that. Let's go ahead and open one. So can2.isOpen equals yes. And now we have tea. Now if I drink from this, I'll have less tea in this one, less ounces than this one. So I need to create a method for drinking so that when I run that method, the number of ounces in this instance goes down. So you can see in objects, they have individual, they all come from the same class, but they have their own individual properties. And when used out in the real world, they do their own things.